Matt Boehner from Defense Daily. I guess we can kind of start off by asking about this refined modernization strategy, this 1.5. It's expected to come out soon. I was wondering if, when is that expected to come out, and what aspects can we expect to see refined? Will there be even, maybe some more specific timelines? And if that is the case, could you maybe offer some details behind some of those changes?
So we're shooting for this summer. I'm not going to get more specific than that, not because the work is not progressing well. It's the approval process it'll have to go through, which is just going to take some time to iterate with the chief and the secretary. The initial version of 1.0 was tied to last year's modernization strategy that went to Congress. But it was very materiel focused. So the major difference between 1.5, which is what will come out, I'm sorry, 1.5 is out. This is a modernization strategy. That's what you asked me about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so the 1.5 is out. The modernization strategy will be tied to 1.5, which had more of a joint flavor to it, and specifically the difference between the last modernization strategy and this one that will come out is it will look across an acronym we call .mil-PF. So it will start to drive how we're organized. It will start to drive the leader development process. It will start to drive the facilities that we'll need to either recapitalize or build new for the new structures. And it's really designed because under this construct, Training and Doctrine Command remains responsible for integration across that paradigm .mil-PF. But it's really starting to drive the Army towards more of a holistic solution as opposed to just materiel.
And I was wondering, in this next strategy you mentioned during your talk about the horizontal versus vertical.
Right.
Have you maybe come to more of a conclusion about which path might make more sense, and will that be reflected in the updated strategy?
It will be reflected in the updated strategy, and it will probably be reflected most prominently in the work that leads up to the next POM. The POM we're working on right now, so the next budget we'll submit next January to Congress. So the Army has always modernized vertically, and it's because it takes, let's say I have 20 Armored Brigade combat teams, which we will at some point if we make the decision on the 17th, and then 3 in Armored APS, the pre-positioned stocks. The most the Army's ever going to be able to afford in terms of, let's say, the new tank, the SEP V4, is going to be about a brigade a year, and it's just budget reality. So we're going to have to choose which brigades get those tanks first, and all vertical modernization really means is that we put some thought into which brigades those are against which pacing sets, threats, and do we now, and this is really what the question is, do we now focus brigades on specific threats, or do we continue to treat brigades as interchangeable Legos that can go anywhere and do anything? And that's really the crux of the discussion.
And just to follow, it sounds like, horizontal versus vertical, that decision is made that we're going to do it vertically.
No, Chief and Secretary haven't made that decision yet. So that's still in discussion.
But it sounds like your recommendation.
My recommendation is vertical.
And presume, by tease out a little bit more, is a recommendation that some units be aligned against regions and O plans?
We used to do that. It was called a Forces 4 document. And then you get into the debate, Sydney, about whether, a brigade, if you align them against an O plan, which is the Forces 4 document did, is that the only thing they can do? And the answer is absolutely not. So if we align a brigade against a region in the world and war breaks out in another region of the world, that brigade is still going to have to be able to deploy and fight. It's more of a, and I like to call it focus modernization. So you focus your modernization efforts on your most serious threats, and those units, regardless of components, so Compo, active component, National Guard, Reserve, if they're on that Forces 4 document, they get modernized first.
And is there an ACRC or AC Reserve National Guard shift involved, and what goes where? Because I know there's some issues, at least with certain things that were parked in the RC, by Abrams and company that, we have needed access to more often. Conversely, there are certain, only so many BCTs we can flow overseas at a given pace. So, do we need to actually, switch, balance combat versus combat support, combat support?
We are looking at that. We are not looking at size right now, so that we're not looking at reducing, increasing the National Guard, reducing, increasing the active component or the U.S. Army Reserve. We are looking at the mix of capabilities across the components.
I've had 5, so I think I should let it go.
Down suits defense meeting activity. Sir, right now, Secretary and the Chief are up on the Hill discussing the future budget. Let's say a future outlook doesn't look good, positive for the Army. What's the contingency plan moving forward over the fiscal year defensive spending plan?
You mean if we don't achieve the top line?
Correct.
You have to see how it falls out, obviously. It's a hypothetical. With the respects of modernization versus readiness, what choices we would have to make. Very difficult, but when 60% of combatant commanders' requirements have to be filled by the Army, we have to be ready. And it's a sacred responsibility for us to ensure that they have the repetitions and the resources necessary to be at the highest state of readiness to support national objectives. Be very difficult, and it could potentially, if we don't get the funding requirement we need, it could stall or stifle some of the momentum we've achieved over the last 2 years.
Raj, and then also in your address, you mentioned that you're looking at cutting $10 billion, I believe, over the next 5 years.
We have a target, a reform target of $10 billion from 21 to the 25 FIDIP, and that's a recognition of a host of factors. Clearly, they want to have the resources required. We have maybe north of half of the 30 signature systems that General Murray's driving are developmental programs. And then along with developmental programs is obviously high risk. We'll couple with the fact where you're going to have to field these capabilities into our formations. So we know we're going to need more money. And we know we need to be better with every tax dollar that's granted to us, and there's a lot of room to reform. So Secretary in Chief put that target out there, and we are driving towards that.
If I
That's
could,
on top of what's already been done.
Yes, that's over and above.
But you said cut, so it's not necessarily a cut off the top line. It's reallocation within the top line. Yeah.
Good, yeah, good point.
General, you said that you guys aren't looking at size right now, reducing the components and everything. When are you going to start integrating more information about how you want the organizational force structure to be within the modernization strategies and what exactly those sizes are?
You're talking about specifically the mix between the compos?
Yeah.
So just like everything in the Pentagon, there's a process for that. So we met with the Chief and the Secretary a week or two ago, and really it was just the beginning of the conversation. So we're expecting some decisions from the Secretary and the Chief probably sometime this summer. And really what we're trying to do is align the processes we're talking about. So an annual mission or annual modernization guidance that I publish that kind of drives this process called total Army analysis, and that's where structure decisions get made that then drive the building of the next POM. And so strategy drives structure, drives programs is really what the POM deals with. And so you end up with a fully informed modernization POM based upon the strategy. So if everything stays on track, we're expecting some decisions this summer from the Chief and the Secretary about, it will just be a start, right? So you're not going to do this all overnight. So it's going to be done in increments over time.
General Murray, looking at the 20 budget and everything that's been reorganized, can you say if you feel like you're adequately funded in what you need to do, just looking at 20?
Totally.
Okay. And then looking ahead to 21, I know you're now, the baton has kind of been passed to you to form the requirements and make the following cuts through 21 through 25. How are you looking at that process and really weighing the costs and demands?
That's a great question. So, and I would say, I mean, the process we went through last year, and I say we because I was obviously as a GA a key part of that, and I was really in the same position I am right now, teeing stuff up to the Secretary and the Chief. What's different is we teed up everything last year. So the Secretary and Chief and it's just not me, it's Bruce Jetty, Dr. Jetty. And I sit at a table much like this, sometimes on VT, sometimes live, and we are doing what the Chief and the Secretary did last year. We're going through every program. We've gotten through everything but the SAP program so far, and
SAP?
Special Access Programs, sorry.
We will never tell you about those.
And I think the Secretary, and I think they're more comfortable with it this year because, as the Under was saying, I mean, we had to institutionalize the process. It had to live beyond just that Secretary and that Chief. So this is a way of institutionalizing it, and to specifically answer your question, it is all focused on the concept of multi-domain operations, some of the structures that we are looking at in terms of what we look like for a multi-domain operation capable force in 2028, and it's only capable in 2028 because of the realities of budget and time, and then eventually an MDO ready force in 2035, which is the ultimate target. So based upon the capabilities that will be necessary, the structures that will be necessary to support those two formations, that is really, the litmus test against everything we're applying everything against.
Right, okay. And for Undersecretary McCarthy, with everything that's going on with border welcoming and the possibility of reprogramming authority being taken away, do you think that the Army has enough of what it's done already without the reprogramming to meet the proper deadlines for the next generation systems?
You mean, would we be looking for additional reprogramming authority in this fiscal year?
Because with the unfunded priorities list having already gone over to Congress, can you live without that? Or can you live without?
Can we live without the unfunded requirement?
Yeah. Or can you
Okay,
live
so you
without
asked a couple
reprogramming
questions there.
authority?
Let me try to work my way through this.
Okay, sorry.
Reprogramming authority is a critical tool for leaders because there are always unexpected needs. We worked very hard in the 18 and 19 to ensure that those above threshold programs, the $990 million worth, align against the 6 investment priorities. We think we're in very good shape there. There may be 1 or 2 issues that we're working through that right now, and that's coming to a head, and General Murray will tell us if something needs to be adjusted. So from that standpoint, we're in pretty good shape right now, but you always want to have that in reserve because there are always unexpected or unknowns or things we learn along the way in the process. So very grateful for that authority that Congress grants us, and we're trying to be judicious with utilization and also to protect it. But I would never want to lose that or yield that. It's a capability we need.
Yeah, Ashley Rumke with James. A few weeks ago, Undersecretary, you mentioned the RAND report talking about some of the steps that the Army should do to, maybe step up its lobbying when compared with the other services. As you're sort of going and talking to the different congressional offices and the committees, have you changed your approach for messaging of the modernization programs and the ones that you are cutting at this point?
Yes, I don't think we use the word lobbying, but I think advocacy, communication. But I at least for the 21 months I've been on this job, you look historically, have we done well compared to other services? It's tough. But I would say in the last 21 months, the thing that I'm most excited about is at various echelons between the cross-functional teams, with General Murray, Dr. Jetty, we've had a very aggressive campaign to be able to explain our modernization strategy, both internally to the Army, but externally to Congress and industry. So I'm very encouraged by what I've seen, but it's you have to be relentless and you have to engage. So every day you got to get out there and you got to pick up the phone, you got to meet with somebody, but I think we've been pretty good so far.
Now, I would just add, so at the committee level, what I think they're asking for is very reasonable. They're asking for insights and communication, which we have not done well in the past. And so as the Secretary mentioned, the cross-functional teams, General Richardson, my deputy, I've been on the Hill, meeting with the committee staffs probably at least once a month, if not every 2 weeks, in different CFTs. And so that flow of communications and some insights into what we're trying to do, I think, has made a difference as well.
Are you able to characterize how it's gone since the budget's been released, communicating your hard decisions to lawmakers? And then also, are you able to say if and when you will release the complete list of almost 20 or 200 programs that have been cut or curtailed?
So I have, and on personal level, I've engaged with the chairman and ranking of all committees of jurisdiction, met with the staff directors and other associated senior staff over the course of the last 45 days, and was ensured that we went through the methodology of night court and how it is a means for us to finance our ambition. This is going to be a process, though. We're going to have to do this through the summer, and once they get through conference, to ensure that we follow this all the way into the barn. We're just getting started, really. With respect to the actual, it's in the J books, the decisions that were made, and those should have arrived at Congress, I believe, a week ago. Mm-hmm. But are you saying for us to publish some kind of document to make it just a little bit easier for you? I'll think about it. Sure.
Beth Mondrel from Shepherd Media. You mentioned the multi-domain operational timeline 2028 and 2035. What are the main priorities for the Army in achieving those timelines?
Well, it's several things. So one is the joint nature of multi-domain operations, and MDO is a concept at this point, so eventually it's going to have to be turned into doctrine. So it can be fully integrated. We can integrate it into our leader development programs. We can integrate it, at all levels of the Army. So that's a priority. The organizational construct we talked about, bringing that together. The programs or the efforts the cross-functional teams are working on, beginning to field those capabilities. So it is really a marriage of structure, how we intend to fight, and the capabilities to fight. And then, of course, in a timeline that's sufficient enough to allow people to train and understand the new structure and the new organization or the new equipment.
Undersecretary McCarthy. So following up on your keynote this morning, you're talking about slowing down the end strength growth, and that frees up some money to move over to other things. How does that slow affect the effort to plug holes in existing formations, especially as the Army is working on processing out a lot of long-term or permanent non-deployables?
Mm-hmm. So we are still going to grow 2,000 per year, year over year. So we'll continue to grow steadily, not to the ramp as previously forecasted. With respect to the structure, one of the things that we've done throughout this reform effort is to look at spaces and faces across the entire structure of the Army, and to ensure that you have make choices in the headquarters or administrative type of roles, and put those types of tail type of capability and putting that into the tooth. So moving the head count or structure into our formations to try to get back to the target of getting 105% manning in units. So we've been able to find some successes with that through the restructuring of the whole the DHA effort, as well as the HQDA reform efforts. So we have been able to move faces to certain spaces that have been empty previously. The concern of non-deployability, I mean, if you look at it, those are assets that would be sitting on the bench. So the non-deployable status policy that came down was a means to incentivize folks to get healthy, to get strong, and get back in the formation. So, there's a way to incentivize the force to get for us to have the maximum amount of assets capable to deploy. So I think that the combination of those factors has created the right behaviors to get us in a better place.
What are some of those headquarters organizations that you're looking to free up, and how many people, how many faces is that?
Off the top of my head, I don't think I'd be able to quantify that for you. But we've looked throughout HQDA over the last couple of years in particular, and I think we could make those numbers available for you.
That would be very helpful.
We could do that as well for the, through the DHA restriction.
Another question for Mr. McCarthy. Could you give us a final clarification on the JLTV objective, because we've kind of been confused? You said you cut 1,099 from the total.
So the decision on the JLTV that was made, if you look at this FIDIP, there will be a reduction. And if you, so if you want the exact number will really come out, because we cut $800 million across the FIDIP. So slowing the buy. And that's because we're looking at the analysis of this capability and how it fits to support our objectives under our national defense strategy. That $800 million could account for anywhere from 1,500 to 1,900 total vehicles orders, because when you truncate the buy, those economies of scale or discounts you would achieve based off of quantities will change the per unit cost. So it could be 1,637. I mean, it'll all work out once you start working that with the vendor. Now, within this FIDIP, yeah, and further, we're going to conduct analysis to see how this weapon system fits under the national defense strategy. So the truncation of the buy across the FIDIP is ultimately going to change the program of record. We have not totally communicated that, the bureaucratic means to do that, but the signal is clear that we're looking at this weapon system and making this.
Your total acquisition objective remains at 49,000.
By 2042, I think is the time frame. Yeah.
You started.
I just wanted to clarify the analysis that you're going to do. When are you going to be looking at that and making a decision?
So every year, as part of, and it goes across, and get into a little bit of building. So the program evaluation groups, the PEGs, so TTSS, okay. So every year, as we build the POM, we identify POM planning tasks. And so right now, as I work my way through the equipping and modernization PEG, we're identifying planning tasks for next year's POM, and that's one of them. So over the course of the next year, there will be a planning effort put together.
But the total acquisition objective for the program will decrease.
Maybe.
Maybe. Definitely maybe.
So right now, so AAO's out to 2042. I mean, really, we got a lot of time to figure that out, right? But industry's counting on a more firm answer than definitely maybe. So we have to do the analysis under the NDS in the 2028, 2035 force I talked about. How many JLTVs do we actually need? Has the AAO changed yet? No. I think, did you?
Yes, sir. Bobby Ryan from Defense and Aerospace Report. I mean, the question I would ask is, from a logistics standpoint, sir, so to your portfolio, how important are combat logistics, given that we're going to be in, we could have to fight in a lot of anti-access area denial environments around the world, where, we've gotten into this the spare parts arrive whenever we need them. How much of a factor is sort of the combat logistics part of this in driving requirements, necking things down? And as well as, sir, from a headquarters Army standpoint, about how across the institution you're looking at minimizing supply chains, maximizing commonality, and all of those things that keep combat.
So critical, as you would imagine, just like they've always been. And the good, it is very good, is General Perna, the head sustainer for the Army, sets in all the EEPEG reviews that I do. So every session with Bruce Jetty and I sit at the table, Gus Perna has VTC'd in to lend his expertise at that level in terms of logistics. We have got to look at reducing demand, and that's one of the things that I've been asked to do in terms of not only fossil fuel, but can spare parts be printed forward, for instance, to reduce the supply chain. Can we go to autonomous or semi-autonomous technology so you don't have soldiers running up and down very dangerous main supply routes? Can we go with autonomous aircraft to deliver parts? So all that is part of what we're looking at. But to fundamentally answer your question, and you'll see some of this, I mean, we made some investments through this review into some key logistics systems based on some of the early analysis that General Wesley talked about in his modeling and simulation.
I would add that General Perna has been very aggressive in expeditionary 3D printing. He has a Center of Excellence up in Rock Island, Illinois. He's getting a lot of support from Congress on that as well, from Senator Durbin and Congressman Bustos, to be able to put this capability in place where they'll do 3D printing in the field and to be able to extend the legs of our brigades. So he's been very aggressive and innovative in this, from this standpoint, and I think it's something you definitely want to talk to him about over the next couple of days.